is Wayne and welcome back to the channel. So this is the next video in my M416 Overland build series. And today we're going to be building a lid for the trailer. I've been waiting to do this for a long time and I'm really excited for this project. So let's get to work. You know, ever since I decided to do this trailer project, I knew I wanted to have a lid on the trailer. You know, it's a great way to keep everything secured, safe, and keep it dry, away, and out of the elements. But it's a big project. We have a lot to do. So let me show you what we've been working on. So here's all the steel I just picked up from the local metal supplier that I have. And again, the reason why I'm building this main structure out of steel is I only have a MIG welder. I know it would be great to build this frame out of aluminum. It would save me a bunch of weight, but sometimes you gotta do the best with what you have. So in this case, we're gonna build the main structure out of steel. And the first thing I wanna build is the 90-degree angle iron frame. It's gonna run around the tub. Now there's a bit of a challenge there because I can't lay the angle iron up on this rounded edge of the tub very easily to do the mock-up and build and do all the fitment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear out the garage space in the floor, and I'm going to use the garage floor as basically my fabrication table. It's not ideal, but again, doing the best with what we have here is going to be the motto of this build. So the plan is to do all my measurements and get everything precise and cut on the ground and laid out, and then I'll just tack it together. And once it's all tacked together, then I can put the four sides onto the trailer and double check all the clearances. Now, if you've seen my other videos, like my trailer hitch video or the D-ring video I did for the trailer, you'll know that I do a lot of design work, and I did the same thing for this lid project. So let me show you what I've come up with in CAD so far. So the main structure of the lid is out of angle iron. It is 1.5 inches and it is 1/8 inch thick. Then all the square tubing is 3/4 inch 60 wall. That's going to help keep the weight down as it is right now. As you see it, it's about 55 pounds. And I have it designed a 3/8 air gap all the way around the angle iron to the tube upper rail of the tub. All right, so I cleared up some space on the garage floor, and now I have the main rails for the trailer lid laid out on the garage floor. So what I'll do now is I'll go ahead and cut a 45-degree angle at each corner, and then I'll triple check all my measurements in length, mark the other end, and then get everything cut to fit. All right, so here's my sheet that I'm working to. We have the tub width and tub length. Now, I've taken many measurements across the tub, and it's actually very square. It's 51.25 is the OD, and the tube length is 74.25. Now, what I've done is I have my measurements for the outside of my frame. And I'm going to have, again, 3/8 air gap all the way around between the inner rail of the tub and the inner rail of my frame rail. So on the outside width, max width of the angle iron is going to be 52.25, and the max length is going to be 75.25. So that's going to give me the number that I need to double check once I have everything laid out on the floor. All right, so I made my first cut with my chop saw, but man, was that blade seriously struggling. So I ended up just basically getting a good score mark with it, and then I had to switch over to my little handheld grinder with a diamond tip blade, and it went through it like butter. Man, was that super annoying. I've used that chop saw a lot, but never on thick angle iron before. So I ended up ordering one off Amazon, and I'm gonna have it tomorrow, but for today, I'm going to try to finish those cuts with that method, which is gonna be a slow process. So we're gonna get through it, doing the best we can. And as I'm cutting these, I'm just doing one edge at a time. And I'm marking each one as well, like with a Sharpie, just so I don't lose my orientation and I don't possibly cut one the wrong way or the wrong angle on the wrong edge. I just want to make sure I'm triple checking all my cuts, measuring twice, cutting once, and trying to stay organized and just really taking my time. This has to be exact. I don't want to have any accidents here, so we're trying to hit a home run, building this frame so it fits perfectly around the tub rail. So my first corner is pretty close. I double check to make sure the corners of the tub are perfectly square and perpendicular, and they are good 90-degree corners. So now I have these laid out on the garage floor so I can tune them in. All right, so try to get these corners perfect is what I'm doing, is laying these out with a big square. And you can see I have a small gap on the outside corner. That means I need to shave off just a little bit on the inside to tighten up that gap and bring it all perfect. All right, well, I'm gonna say that is about as good as I can get it. So what I'll do now is I'm gonna measure the OD I have on my CAD file, and I'm gonna come over and mark a mark on this one, mark it off, and do my next cut, 45-degree cut. And then I'll start working on the next corner. The plan is just to double and triple check all my OD dimensions, make sure it's all square, work it myself all the way around. And once I have all the corners all good and square and I'm good with my overall dimensions, what I'll do is I'll go in and put a few tacks in each corner and then take the frame up to the tub and double check all my air gaps. Because again, we're shooting for 3/8 of an air gap all the way around from the tube rail to the inside vertical edge of the 90-degree angle liner. All right, so I just made my marks for the corner, and that's, again, outside dim is 52 1/4 is what I'm shooting for. So I'm gonna cut, I made the mark just on the outside of it, so I can always feather it in with a grinder if I need to. And I'd rather be a little safe than sorry and come up just a hair short. But we're looking good, so everything's looking good so far. We'll make this cut, and then we'll move on to the next piece. So I just finished up cutting and fitting the second corner, and it's looking really good. Double check the width, and it's exactly where I want it at 52 1/4 OD. So we're looking good right now, and everything's nice and square. So now we're gonna go and cut the next corner. Keep moving along. See if we can hit that magic number we're looking for. Sure enough, 75.25, right on the money. Cool, now we can go work on our last corner, making progress. All right, last corner is all done and fitting nice. It was a hair long, so I had to put it back in the chop saw and take about a 1/4 inch off the length, but now the length is dialed in and it's perfectly square. And it's really simple tools I'm using, the grinder and my chop saw, a square and a nice angle finder is really all I'm using. Nothing special. So just remember that if you're gonna try to do something like this as well. But man, that definitely took some time. I wanted to get it as nice and as straight and as true as possible before I started any welding. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bevel all the edges, because my plan is to do the major welding on the inside. I'll do some cleanup welding on the outside, but I want this to have a really good beveled edge, nice chamfer, that way I can get good penetration, because this is pretty thick, 1/8 inch steel. And but what I want to do now is I'm just going to tack it probably about 3 places in each corner, but I want to get that nice chamfer edge before I do any of that. So I'm going to get it tacked up in each corner, and then we're going to see about putting it on the trailer. Double check my overalls. They're exactly where I want them to be, 52 1/4 and 75 1/4. And now we can see how the lid fits on the trailer. Let's get some help and do that. Okay, Logan, so we have to flip it over. Hold yours down low, Julie. Let it be on the ground. Okay, now Logan, go to the front corner. Or you can pick up that edge as soon as Mom and I lift it up. All right. Oh yeah, you got some water. Yes, victory! Oh, sweet. Oh man, that is so satisfying. It fits perfect, just as I had designed and planned and hoped for. So had the family come out, give me a hand, lift it on. Man, that is great. It looks perfect. I have the clearance around underneath that I want. Get a nice platform to start from. And now we have to do our finish welds and clean all this up. And then we can start on the next phase. But yeah, just loving all of it right now, how it looks and how it turned out. Again, no fancy tools, working on my garage floor, doing the best with what we got. All right, well, these cleaned up real nice. So I'm gonna be painting this and building this structure on top of it and then skinning over it. But I just wanted the weld smooth so I can build on top of it. So we're gonna flip it over, work on the welds on the inside. I'm really just gonna focus on the weld underneath this one because that's where my gasket's gonna go. The weld on the inside on this corner is not all that critical as far as being cleaned up, but we're gonna flip it over and clean up the flat weld and go from there. So now it's time to cut our vertical uprights for our lid. And for right now, we're gonna focus on what I'm gonna call our main hoops. There's gonna be 3 of them running front to back. So there'll be 1 on each end and 1 in the middle. And these are, again, 3/4 inch tubing, and these are 10.75 inches tall. And the top will have a chamfer. I could stack them, but I really want to do a nice chamfered edge, really tie them into each other well, and that plus that way there's no open end either for any water or elements to get into. And what I'm also going to do on the outside edge, I want the sheet metal to wrap around the uprights and be flush with this main frame, because I want the sheet metal to come around, and then I plan to wrap it over. So with that being said, I want to put a nice beveled edge on the outside so I have a nice pocket for my weld to sit into. That way I can also grind it flush and have a nice smooth finish. So we're going to again cut our 6 uprights, put our 45 degree on the top, and grind the edges down. One thing you always want to make sure you do before you do your angled cuts in your chop saw is definitely make sure your blade is all at the right angle and squared up. So that's what we'll do. We'll put our angled edge on our finder and make sure it's unplugged. Then you can make sure your blade is where I want it. Thankfully it hasn't moved, it's still good from where it was before. Now we're gonna put our material stock in. Alright, so just taking my time getting this first one fitted. Had to take off a hair of this leg out in this corner just to get it sit perfectly flat with the angle iron. And now I think we're all ready to just tack it in place. I'm not going to finish all this right now. I want to put some good tacks on it and keep working it all the way around on the other ones as well. Kind of get things all tacked in place before I go and finish weld everything, just in case I have to cut something off, Things not going to go anywhere with probably 3 or 4 good tacks. So we're good. I like it. Again, I want this to be flush with the ends because my idea is to wrap the sheet metal over it and maybe do a little flange on the inside. We'll see. All right, so we have all these tacked in place, and that went pretty smoothly. Everything looks good. Double check my measurements at the top. And I'm about 1/4 inch shorter in distance wise than what my CAD model is, but things move, but it's lining up with the outside of this at 75 inches. So what we're gonna do now, this might be the most challenging part now of this frame structure, is we need to cut the long piece and get it in place and tack it in, because my original thought and what I still think I want to do is cut these long places, tack it in, and then slide in the supporting ones underneath it and tack those in. I think it would be easier. I mean, I don't think these are so skinny, there's no way I could balance a long beam on it, but I'll probably put like the magnet on one end, get it in place, and then the other end I'll tack it. And plus these can, you can wiggle these around just a hair at the top end of it. If you need to move like an 1/8 inch, you can. But we're gonna cut our one long piece. We're gonna go one at a time and see how this goes. Yeah, cross our fingers, but this is gonna be a little tricky, but we'll give it a shot. All right, so I tried to hit a home run on this one. First time at the plate, one cut and be done. The thing is with that chop saw, it has that little carbide blade. You can't make small cuts with it. And because if you do, it'll try to walk on you. So I went right to my number, and I'm hoping this is gonna work without much tweaking at all. All right, it's a good fit on that end. Oh man, one cut. Nice, I like it. That's pretty cool. My first thought is it looks a little tall. Mine could have went a couple inches shorter, but I had the idea is I might want to put some you know, obviously I wanted extra headroom in the trailer to be able to put some things in it. And I also had the idea to maybe put some straps on the inside of the lid, maybe to hold some tools, you know, some light tools and stuff. So that was my idea, but overall, man, that is pretty cool. You know, let's say the rooftop rack is maybe here. Elevate the rooftop rack to just above, just over 6 feet so you can walk underneath it. So maybe that has, you know, 16 or so inches of raise up of adjustability. And I'm not sure if it's actually, I have a feeling this whole thing will be a little lower once we get the suspension and wheels on it, but that's nice. All right, cool. I think we're gonna tack this one in and keep moving along. All right, so everything is going good. I went ahead and cut my other 2 long pieces and tacked those in place. Everything is fitting up and looking good. Happy with the results so far. And now what I think I'm gonna go do is go ahead and like fully weld the base of all these verticals. I wanna get those in nice and secure now that I'm happy with the angle, the location, the main cross beams. And once those are done, and then I can start cutting and fitting all my other pieces. I have a couple of verticals on the long sides, and then I have all the ones that are going to go in between these 2 runners that are going front to back. So now let's weld up all the bases of these at the support of the lid and go from there. All right, so all those support pieces are in place now. I just welded them all up, but now the only pieces I have left to weld up now are the longer cross braces that go, you know, from here to there, in the middle to the far end. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8 more cross braces that add side to side to the trailer. But before I do that, I need to come in and grind down these welds. I'm getting tired of grinding welds, but it's what we have to do. So we're gonna do that and then we can weld in our last pieces for this rooftop work. And then we'll have the whole structure, the skeleton, the bones of this done. All right, so they're all tacked in place. Now I'm gonna go through the task of welding them all. So yeah, it's gonna take a little bit of time, so sit back and hold tight. So all the welds are ground down, and now I'm going to focus on my hinges, and I haven't talked about those yet, but I plan to have 4 hinges on the passenger side of the trailer. And what I plan to use is these stainless steel offset hinges. These are kind of nice. They're designed to be offset, so they'll be a lot closer to the sidewall of the tub. But even so, there's still a little bit of a ways, maybe 1/4 inch, so I'll have to use a little bit of a spacer, but they're pretty close. And they're just going to be tall enough to clear the angle iron with the bolt holes. So that's good. So, but what I need to do is make a couple of reinforcement plates. I plan to have 4 of these. And the ones on the outer end are going to be a little bit longer. So I measured it all out. They're going to be 3 inches high, and these are going to be 4 inches wide, the reinforcement plate. That'll be behind, you know, the sheet metal I skin it with. So I need to get all that welded in and prepped nice and smooth as well. So I have one here. Now this one will be 3 high as well, but only 3 wide because I don't need to move inboard any extra. And I'll have another one here, and then another one here as well. So this one will be 4x3. So I need to make 2 4x3 plates, and then 2 3x3 plates. All right, so I have all my support brackets for the hinges made. I already have the edges beveled down and put a nice chamfer, so I have a nice spot for my weld. So we're going to go ahead and get these lined up, held in place with a magnet, and tacked in place, and then come back and finish weld them. So these are the latches I decided to use for the trailer. I wanted something that you could actually pull down and compress, if you will, and tighten up and dial in your fit. And I think these will work pretty well. I'm gonna have one the front corner and one at the rear corner. And plus they have a provision where you can put a lock on it, and that's something I definitely wanted as well. So that'll work out. Now my handles have not come in, but I'm just gonna have 2 grab handles, like I said. So now I made up my reinforcement plates. Here's one on each end for the lock. Then here's my reinforcement plate for the handle. So I'll have a grab handle here, another grab handle here too, as well as my other latch. So making more reinforcement plates, but they're all fitting up good. Same as before as what I did on the hinges, obviously. So we're gonna tack those in and weld those in place. All right, so now I have all my supports made for my latches, my handles, as well as the hinges on the other side. And you'd think we're done with this process, but no, there's one more thing I need to do. And now I want to build basically a hard stop for the lid. Reason being is, I've already mentioned I'm going to have a gasket underneath this channel of the lid. And I don't want all the weight of the lid to constantly be on that gasket, because this whole lid is going to be roughly 70 pounds by the time it's all done and skinned. And if you have all that weight on a gasket, over time, it's going to compress it so much where it won't ever recover. So what I want to do is I want to build a little platform in each corner, one on the lid, and then one on the trailer. And then I'm going to use Delrin. This is the same product I use for spacers on my D-rings. And what I'm going to do is I'll cut off a piece of this. We'll determine that once I get all my spacing figured out. But I'll basically take a piece of this, drill it, and then bolt it to the platform that I'm going to weld onto the lid frame. Probably, you know, roughly 2 by 2 inch low platform. We'll bolt it to the lid. Then I'll make a couple simple little L brackets, bolt another, or weld that platform to the actual trailer. And that way the Delrin will come down and hit that platform. Because if I didn't have this, the weight of the lid would eventually crush the gasket basically, and the gasket would never recover. And in the packaging world, we would say the gasket would take a compression set and it just wouldn't recover, because this is roughly going to be 70 pounds by the time it's all done. So I want to have a hard stop. So that way I'm going to leave roughly 50% of the gasket thickness. I'll have an air gap in between the lid and the actual trailer. So let's say, for example, the gasket is 1/2 inch thick. I want to have a 1/4 inch air gap designed into it. That way we'll never over compress the gasket, and that way it should seal for a long time. All right, enough talk about that. Let's get to cutting some steel. So this is what I've come up with to be my hard stop platform in each corner. Again, so I want to be able to lift the lid off the rails of the trailer. That way I have an air gap for my gasket. And what I plan to do is I'm going to take one of these. I've already pre-drilled a hole, which I'll explain for in a minute. I'm going to weld this into the edges of the angle iron on the trailer. And the hole is it's going to be for the Delrin. And I'll bolt a piece of Delrin to this. And I'll use a hole, that way I can countersink the head. That way it's all nice and flush. Now this one though, this is 1 1/4 inch. Because the final one is going to be 1.5 inches. But I'm going to use this one. The reason being is I want to try to make sure, I need to make sure I get the bracket, everything in place where I want it. So I'm going to tack the top piece into the trailer lid first, get that tacked in place. And then I'm going to use a clamp to squeeze these two together at 1.25 inches, and that way I can tack this bottom bracket in place, and I'll have it in the exact location that I want. And then the ones that I actually use will be 1/4 inch longer. That'll give me the extra air gap that I want. So now what we need to do is go get the corners of the lid all prepped, as well as the trailer tub, get those I need to get the corners of the lid all prepped, ground down and cleaned up, as well as the tub corners, and mark this on the tub of the trailer where it's going to go. And then I can get everything tacked in place, and that should go okay. And again, this Delrin, it cuts super easy with my chop saw. And all I have to do is I'm going to use a 1/4 inch hole. I've already have it drilled out. And then use like a socket head screw or something that'll sit nice and flush. That way I don't have to try to get, a actual socket in there. I can use an Allen wrench. and then a little washer, and then I'll put the bolt on the top side of the lid. So this should work out pretty well, I'm thinking, and this stuff is super durable and it's going to work great. But the key is I just want to get it all nice and square and sitting level. So let's go get the trailer and lid prepped, and then we get all this tacked in place. If that wasn't really clear, so let me show you now on the trailer what we're going to do. We're going to have this piece welded right into the trailer, and I offset it inboard a little bit. This is a 2" by 2" piece, and the Delrin's 1.5 inches, so I want the Delrin out towards the inner corner, or the inboard corner as much as possible. And then, like I said, once that's welded in place, we'll have this whole feature basically as a platform for the Delrin to sit on. So if I weld all this up at 1.25 inches, and I cut the piece of Delrin that I'm actually going to be used at 1.5 inches, it's going to lift up the whole lid 1/4 inch from the trailer. So this should work out well. I know one tricky thing though is, like, when I weld this bracket onto the tub, this is a pretty thick bracket and the tub's not so thin, and the tub is fairly thin, so I have to be real careful not to burn through that sheet metal. All right, so my bracket's in place, the 1.25 inch piece of Delrin's in place, and it's all clamped together. And now we're gonna go in and lay a few tacks on the bracket on each one, and then I'll figure out how I'm gonna get it all welded together. All right, these are all done and cleaned up. They look fantastic. We're really happy with them. I'm going to order some 2" long hardware for the bolts that run through these, and some lock nuts and some washers. Here you can see what I've kind of come up with for these latches, how I want to latch and mount and also be able to lock the lid. So just again showing the reinforcement plates. And now we just need to figure out a way to mount this latch to the trailer. So what I did is I came up with an idea just to take the same steel I'm using for these, which is 1/8 inch. So I cut out three pieces, measure it all out, and I'm going to weld it to the tub basically as such. So that way I'll have a good, secure, heavy foundation for my latch to bolt to the trailer. So I'll do one of these in the front and the back, and yeah, that should work out great. Now I'm going to install the hinges to the lid first, and I've already laid out some holes on the painter's tape on the reinforcement brackets. Now the reason why I want to do that is I want to make sure all the hinges are perfectly in line, because you want to make sure they're nice and horizontal and straight, so the center line of all the axes are exactly the same, because if they're not, you can have some binding, because we have 4 different hinges, right? So we've got to make sure the center lines of all of these are perfect as we can get them. So first we'll get them all drilled and bolted to the lid, and then we'll come back and get the lid nice and square to the tub, and then we'll drill the holes into the tub and mount these to the tub. All right, so I have the outboard hinges bolted to the lid, and right now I have it all like flush fitting to the tub. Now what I'm going to have to do though is make some spacers to space it out just a little bit so I have the right amount of air gap, because right now I have a really tight fit between the tub rail and here, and I knew that already. So here's what the struts look like. Pretty solid looking pieces, and they're pretty short, and it's nice that they come with a diagram of how to mount all these, because that would take a little while to figure out all your angles, but this is going to be pretty cool. And we have all the brackets, and all the brackets are identical. They just do get orientated differently. You have to follow the instructions to see how they go, and then how they slide in. It's pretty simple. You have a little release clip that you slide off, and then there's 2 little holes on there that it comes out, and then this will just pop in. There's another little ring on the inside, so all you do is get it lined up and then snap it in, and then it'll Just a little bit of force, it'll pull right out. And once it's in, you put your pin in and you're good to go. So my plan for the two lower mounts on the tub side, I'm just gonna drill 2 holes to the tub and bolt this straight to it. Now on the lid side, I have to do something a little different. I have to space it out so it's in line with the bottom one. And unfortunately, I have a vertical upright in the exact location where I need it. So I took an extra piece of my 3/4 inch tube, and I'm gonna weld it to this and make a bracket. This is more. This is the same 1/8 inch steel I've been using for all my reinforcement plates. So I already have these all cleaned up and prepped. I'm just gonna weld this plate to the 3/4 inch tube, and I'll weld this to the crossbar. And then I'll be able to bolt the bracket straight to this piece. So that should work out real nice on the lid side. So that should be plenty strong enough. So I have all this get prepped up. I'm gonna weld the brackets together, and then I'll weld the bracket to the lid. All right, so I have all 4 of my hinges all bolted up to the trailer and the tub, and I'm also using my spacers from Send Cut Send, and everything's looking good and tight and snugged. And you know what that means? I think it's time we can test out the hinges and see if this lid will raise up and work like it's supposed to. I'm definitely excited, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit nervous. So I never designed anything and with hinges before, so yeah, big moment here for this build. So I say we just give it a go and see what happens with this thing. Oh. How awesome is that? Comes down to rest right on my Delrin stops as it should. Well, that came out pretty good, so I'm really happy with how those hinges and how the lid is moving. And now I can move on to installing the hood struts. Now those are obviously come extended, which means you need to install those with the lid up. So I need to come up with a little prop, basically a 2x4 to hold the lid up while I can mount the hinge. So what I did is cut down a 2x4, put a couple notches in it, and it had a couple little shims in there to get the right height. But this is, again, going to hold it up 24 inches, and that's what I designed my lid to work at, and that's what I ordered these struts to work with 24 inches of lid height when it's open. So this way I can prop the lid up, bolt the top mount into the lid, and then this will help me easily figure out where the lower mount is going to go in the tub. All right, so I have both the struts bolted in, no problems there. And now it's time to see how these things work. You know, I've seen a few people install struts, and sometimes they spec'd out too hard or too light, and I'm really curious. So I'll put the camera on the tripod and remove this, my support 2x4, and see what happens here. All right, she's holding it. Oh wow, that's not bad at all. There's a little bit of tension over here, just I think we have a little bit of binding on the lid. It doesn't want to rest, but once we get the latches on, I'm going to draw it right down. Going up, that's pretty quick. But again, we're still missing a little bit of weight, right? Don't have any of the sheet metal on, don't have the hardware, so we're gonna be adding another 10, 15 pounds I calculated. But that, badass. That is cool. Let's double check that height to see where we're at. Yeah, I mean, we're probably 23.5, so perfect. It's like I just keep doing this over and over. Again, I'm gonna have my two grab handles right here. It goes up pretty quick. It We'll say that. By the diagram, it said it would take about 22 pounds of force to pull it down. That feels about right, and it gradually gets easier until it's all the way down. Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, so I'm finally done with all the fabrication and buildup of the trailer lid for now. Because now I get to actually take it all apart, take all the hardware off. I want to set it up on some sawhorses that I have and prep the lid structure for paint, and then we'll skin it. Well, it's time now to actually paint the lid structure. So we have a beautiful day outside. Temps are in the mid 50s actually, so that's a great thing. And I've already wiped it down really good with the wax and grease remover. So now what I'll do is shake up our cans, and we're gonna rattle can it with some Steal-It and get it painted. So this lid build has been going on actually for several weeks. It's gone through many different stages and a lot of thinking, development, fabrication work, and now I've been waiting for the sheet metal for the skin so I can, skin the outside of the lid. And it just showed up. So here it is. I have 2 sheets. Unfortunately, they don't make one sheet large enough, but honestly, trying to bend one sheet, at all the corners will be pretty difficult anyway. But that does mean I'll have one seam down the center, but I'm okay with that. And my local steel company, All Row Steel, this is 32 thou thick. This is pretty thin aluminum. But my plan is, well, I'll show you later. First, let's go back to how we're going to attach this to the lid. So we're actually going to bond this to the lid structure with 3M VHB tape. It's an industrial strength double-sided tape adhesive. I've never used it before, and we'll see how this works out. Here's the roll of my tape. I ended up ordering it 1/2 inch wide because all my square tubing is 3/4 inch, and they don't make it in 3/4. 1/2 inch is what it's going to be. And I believe this was like 40 thou thick, so pretty thin. And they have it in like twice this thickness, and then this thickness as well. I decided would be kind of, I think, perfect. I don't need it to be real thick. Everything I have is really flat. And when I first peeled a piece off, and I'm like, it doesn't feel that tacky. I was a little concerned, to say the least. Even tried sticking it to my fridge. Nothing. It kind of like peeled right off like nothing. So I'm like, okay, well, I have a couple pieces of scrap metal in the garage. Let me go in and I wiped them down with a metal prep, and then took, like 1.5 inch long piece of that tape on there, and I stuck it to it. And I tell you what, you are not getting these 2 pieces of metal apart. It is, for good on there. There is no way. So that's reassuring. So what I want to do now is just clean the whole lid structure with this grease and wax remover, and we're going to see how it bonds to the painted structure. All right. So we'll put this right below. And I'm just hoping I don't have any difficult reactions with this painted surface, but I think we're gonna be okay. The prep is these are really key. I first got it trying to stick to surfaces that weren't clean and weren't prepped. I had no luck with, but man, already it's not coming off. That's pretty awesome. So now we're gonna go through the arduous task of getting everything prepped and cut all my strips. I'm gonna try to do like a double wide. Well, first I'm gonna go through with one pass everywhere and one pass at the bottom. And I'll have to figure out if I don't have enough on that roll to do a second pass, I'm gonna have to order another roll and get that tomorrow. So I actually ordered off of Amazon. Good old Amazon, they have everything, even this stuff. So now I'll try to put it on my reinforcement brackets too, so they'll go around my handles. and all the latches and the hinges. So we're gonna need a lot of this stuff, and we're just gonna take our time and start laying this out. All right, so my extra roll of tape just showed up, and I finished putting down some extra tape on all my reinforcement areas. So we're all good now. The lid is completely all taped up with the 3M VHB. And now the task of laying out my sheet metal. Now again, I couldn't get one piece of metal large enough to fit the lid, which honestly is fine. That would have been almost impossible for me to work with anyway. So the plan is, this is again 32 thou. I'm laying out all my corners. So what I'm gonna do is, here's the back, and I'll have an overlapping seam in the middle. And what I'm gonna do here is, once I fold the rear piece downward, I'll have a little flange. This is 1.25 inches. I'll fold that over, and this will go on top. And then I'll put 2 rows, again, of the 3M tape here. So we'll have a good, nice, watertight seal on that edge. So that's the plan. We're just laying it all out. Then I'll come in with my little handy dandy saw and cut out all the corners. I'm gonna lay out, then I'll put the sheet metal on the lid after I get this corner cut and the front corner cut. And then what I'll probably do is use the front edge of the actual lid itself to mark my final edge where I want that to be bent. So basically kind of using the 2 edges of the sheet metal as my guides, going off that, because I don't have to worry about trying to match up the center seam, right? I don't care if that is off a little bit here or there. I'm gonna have a big overlap. I have, 1.75 inch designed of like overlap in the center, so I don't care if that's true. But what we'll do is we'll kind of true up the front edge last.
So I decided to rent a aluminum siding brake from Home Depot. It has a maximum material thickness of 30 thou, and that's why I went with a 32 thou sheet aluminum. It was about as thin as I could get. And honestly, you don't really want to go any thinner anyway. This is pretty lightweight material, and I think for this application, it'll be fine because I'm not going to be mounting anything to it. My only intent is really just to keep the elements out. It definitely had its challenges, the bend though. You definitely need an extra hand, and these pieces are so big. Trying to keep everything nice and square and exact was definitely a little bit of a challenge, but I'm really happy with the fit. The corners fit really well. I was hoping on the edges to not have any gaps or overlap, to not have to use any trim, but at the end I decided to use a little trim to finish it off.
Overall, I think this turned out pretty good for doing a project like this for the first time. Overall, it is pretty flat. The corners are pretty good. This one you can see I have a little bit of a tear, or where I was cut and bent and formed. So the first thing I want to do now is I want to come in from the back side and try to drill out all the holes for my hardware, and then I want to put on all the hardware that I can. But first, I need to drill all the holes for the hardware and the hinges on the lid, and then get as much of that bolted on as I can. So now the fun part, man, this is getting pretty exciting. We're gonna install the hardware on the driver's side. So there's our handles and our latches on the lid side. So what I decided to do is use this 3M, it's like a neoprene, really pretty thick or pretty tough, abrasion resistant adhesive, and it's actually a 125 thick. Got it in these little squares off Amazon. And it's a nice thing is it's adhesive on both sides. And there are 2 reasons why I want to do it. The main reason is, this is a dissimilar metal than what the lid is made out of. So you really want to have something in between the 2 types of metal to prevent any type of corrosion. And the second is it's going to be a great seal as well for any water going through the bolt holes, if that's even possible. I mean, I kind of doubt it, but it's going to be a great seal. And so what we'll do is we'll cut out a few squares, we'll stick it to the back of the hardware, and put everything in place. And one thing I want to do is I want to use just a dab of grease on these threads. This stainless hardware, you can kind of bind up and gall and strip on the smaller stuff if you're not too careful. I had a couple during the mock-up stage that did that to me, so we're going to be a little extra careful and just put a dab of grease on the threads, and we'll cut some of these out. So I like to install the bolts first, after I peeled off this backing on the back side and get it all lined up, and we're just gonna push it in place. Now we're gonna go on the inside, put our washers on, and then install the nuts. All right, all the hardware is on the lid and it's looking pretty good. And let me show you, got the hinges all bolted up as well on this side, so all set there. But now I've decided to add some trim. You know, I was thinking I wouldn't have to do that or want to, but you know, I have some gaps in certain spots where the sheet metal doesn't quite come down as low as I had hoped it or planned. So what I'm gonna, and then as well as the corners, you know, some of the corners turned out really nice, but I think for extra, even just durability, protection, and even sealing them up, I'm gonna add that 1-inch 90-degree angle aluminum. And then down here, we're gonna add some 1-inch by 1/8-inch aluminum material, and it just came in, or I should say I just went and picked this up. So we're gonna start laying this out, getting it all cut to length. You know, when I ordered those hinges for the lid, I was a little concerned once I saw them because they weren't the thickest pieces. You know, they're only like 100, 110 thou thick material, but I'm thinking with 4 of them, stainless steel should have no problem. Well, after the lid sitting on the trailer for a couple of days with the hood struts, you know, the hood struts are so strong, they actually started pulling the hinges away from like the center or the axis of the hinges. And the reason is the 3 holes that these hinges have originally on the lid side, they're very far away from the axis. Bending up and just tweaking these a good amount. So what I decided to do is just go through and drill 2 additional holes near the edge of the lid. That way it'll keep it all nice and tight. But if you've ever tried to drill through stainless steel, you know the misery that I just went through. I mean, it took all day of me working on it to drill those 8 holes. But I even went and bought a fresh set of cobalt bits and didn't make a whole lot of difference. Just forever. You really need to be able to put more force on it, like with the press, drill press, but I don't have that. But anyway, they're all done. But now I'm just waiting on 82-degree countersink so I can finish that off for the bolts that I'm going to be using. But in the meantime, I'm installing the trim that I'm going to put on the lid. And I bought some 1-inch 90-degree aluminum angle that I'm installing around all the corners. And again, I'm putting this on just like I did the material with 3M VHB tape. Then I'm going to go in and caulk the edges with it. So we're getting that done while I'm waiting for my countersink to come in. Gonna go in and finish off my 1-inch strips in between all my hinges. All right, we're on our last piece of trim. So, man, I'm looking forward to that being done. Although it's starting to get in the evening here, and I'm hoping my countersink comes in so I can finish those holes on the brackets. My local hardware store, Ace Hardware, did not have that 82-degree countersink that I need. So, yeah, I had to do an Amazon. I said it'd be here overnight, so we have a big Amazon warehouse not too far away, but we'll see. Because all of these, the hardware I'm using on those hinges is number 8 screws, not the biggest, I know, but they have that big 82 degrees countersink on it. But anyway, hopefully that'll show up today. All right, so I just put on the tape. Again, once I have it all prepped up and cleaned up, wipe it down with a wax and grease remover, and then we can stick our tape on. Make sure you wax and grease remover on your mating surface as well. So I'm just going to give this a quick wipe down. We can go stick it on the lid. All right, let's go. And I've already tested it up so I know it's perfect. Before I put the tape on, once this thing is down, you are not getting it off. I mean, if you just touch the corner, that's one thing, but once you get like inch of flat, you know, stuck, you're down. So kind of like line up that edge and just get that height right. Work it down, line up my vertical. Nice. And it is done. Done. Whew, that looks good. Awesome. You know, trimmed it out real nice. I even hit all this trim really quickly with a polishing wheel, buffing wheel. I didn't try to make it a mirror finish because that would have taken a long time to get that aluminum sanded smooth. I just wanted it to have a little bit of shine, so it kind of, you know, matches the trim a little bit. There's a little bit of separation from the panel to my aluminum. But now we just gotta wait for my next order to come in so we can countersink the holes. Now I also ordered some special caulk. I'm gonna use I'll show you when that comes in.
So once I had the vertical angle aluminum on the lid, I decided to basically use a caulk, which is the Sika 221. It's a great adhesive. It's actually great for bonding aluminum to aluminum, and I just use it as a caulk in this instance. And basically fill any little gaps I had in the trim. And it's, you know, worked really well. A lot of the horizontal 1/8 inch, 1 inch pieces that were on the edges, I didn't need it, but basically around the corners, some areas I had some small gaps, and that's where I wanted to use the Sika 221, and I taped it off and applied it, and you know, I'm real happy with it now.
There she is. She's all done. Man, what a long project this has been. So involved, but man, I'm really happy with the results, and I'm so glad it's over too. Move on to some other things, but man, really happy with it. Really satisfied with the outcome, and I think it's going to serve its purpose exactly how I wanted it to. And I just love the way these struts work out. Lift the lid. Yeah, couldn't be happier. So really impressed. As always, I would probably do things a little differently if I was to do it over again, but overall, again, really happy with it. It's going to serve a great purpose, and man, it turned out really, really good for what I was wanting. Well, that's going to be it for this video. I know it was a long one, but there was a lot of detail that I wanted to show, and hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you did, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. And if you turn on that bell notification, you'll be notified each and every time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.